Legends never die. And if you hear Mr. Ramesh Damani, a legendary investor himself, ever talk about Rakesh Jhunjhunwala, the man, there is a friendly respect that always used to come out in those conversations, with me or otherwise. It is therefore only befitting that on an occasion like this, a solemn occasion like this, but where we are trying to celebrate the life of the investor, Mr. Rakesh Jhunjhunwala, that we have the gracious presence of Ramesh Damani to talk about the man in the institution, Mr. Rakesh Jhunjhunwala. Ramesh, much appreciated. And as much as this would be difficult for you, really appreciate you taking the time out and speaking to us.
Sure, Neeraj. Thank you. I think it's important that he has such a huge and popular fan base. We, try and summarize some of the things he taught us over his career of 30, 40 years in the Dalal Street.
Most certainly. Ramesh, a lot of folklore about how close were you and Rakesh and what all you may have done together. Can we just start this conversation by just talking about your relationship with him, both on the investing side and the personal side?
Sure, Neeraj. He had, of course, a wide variety of friends. I was lucky to be called one of them. I met him first in, I guess, 89, 90, the ring, where our common friend Rakesh Damani introduced us in the physical ring that used to be the BSE at that time. And I still remember him telling, this is a smart, young, new investor in India. Those were his words. And from that, we struck up a friendship that has lasted over 30 plus years through marriage, through kids, and through, growing old. So it's been an extraordinary friendship. In terms of professionally, he was so far ahead of all of us in terms of his outlook on the market, his bullishness in India, his ability to see around corners, that though in years I'm a few years elder than him, I think it'd be a fair assessment to say that you all learned from him rather than taught him.
Ramesh, may I ask you to kind of explain from your perspective what stood out so much about him? Because I know a lot has been written, reams and reams have been written and spoken about. But as you look back, what was that special thing about him from your perspective? Because you are a very, very successful investor yourself. So what stood out for you when you look at Rakesh Jhunjhunwala, the investor, aside of his guts, aside of his risk-taking ability and conviction, which has been spoken about ad nauseum?
I'll tell you two things, Neeraj, that stand out for me. One, of course, is his passion. I'll give you a story to explain the kind of passion he brought to investing. And the second, his long-term track record, which is only now even I am understanding and absorbing the long-term track record and what it means. In terms of passion, he was, as most of you know, a 24/7 stock market guy. It did come with downsides in the sense that while all of us pleaded, the family, the friends, the working colleagues, that please take care of your health, it's as important. He was pushing himself on adrenaline and sheer willpower. And, truth be told, he did neglect his health. But to explain his passion, one day we were out in Jeffries, which is a local watering hole in Bombay. A group of us were there with him. And as you were leaving the place, he kind of stumbled and fell. So all his friends scattered around, one to get a chair, one to get some water, one to, call a doctor perhaps. But by the time we came back, he was sitting and he was already calling his broker, trying to find out what the price of Dow was or what the price of gold was. That gave you a good example of how focused he was. I mean, while we were all worried for him, he was worried about what's happening in the markets. So that passion came through in so many different examples of how he dealt day to day, a singular focus on financial markets. But the point the long-term track record and the emphasis, Neeraj, that I think the public needs to understand. If you look at the Forbes 400, which is the list of billionaires in the world, there's only one guy till now who had made it purely from stock market investing, and that was Warren Buffett. He didn't run a hedge fund for most of his life. He invested in stocks. Those went up and he made the money. Now there's a second entrant. It's called Rakesh Jhunjhunwala. Popular folklore has it that he started in 1987 with about 5,000 rupees, which at that time was maybe $500. And he built that into a $4 billion fortune. Now, if you do the compounding in dollar terms, not in rupee terms, but in dollar terms, which is so much harder, from $500 to $4 billion in a span of 35 years, the compounding rate works to something like 50%, which is extraordinary achievement. I mean, think of it, you're in a market which is the rupees, the currency is depreciating, and it's an emerging market, and yet you found so much success purely from investing. No wonder he was called the Pipe of the Large Street.
Yes, indeed. And Ramesh, through some of your interactions with him that I have observed, I think one point of reference that you have for him is that he very, very successfully donned the hat of both an investor and a trader, something that most people, even at a smaller scale, would find it very difficult. Surely there was something that was very unique about him on that perspective.
It is, how do I put it? It's almost impossible. The people who are successful traders and investors, you can count on the fingers of one hand. They're so few and far between. Because it's almost impossible to compartmentalize your feelings. And yet he did that successfully. I think he never mixed his investment with his trading and vice versa. And what I found uncanny about him, Neeraj, was his ability to spot a new bull market beginning. Because once he understood or he felt the new bull market was beginning, he went all in. He was not scared of his conviction. He went all in. So, for example, the last time, in the midst of COVID, when the market was falling, it had started rising a little bit. We friends had a con call together, and well, we all circumspect, saying, "Let's wait for a vaccination. It's too difficult right now." And these are all worthy investors with him. He publicly told us in that con call that a new bull market is begin, and if you don't get in, you'll miss the bull market. And we all looked at him in astonishment. How could anyone call a bull market at that stage? In the maze low of COVID, it was so bad. There were people dying in Delhi. There was no oxygen globally. Everyone didn't know what was going on. But he called it absolutely correctly. And he not only called it, he put all his money in. It was all his chips in. It was all in bet for him. And you know what happened to stocks after that, whether it was Cisco or Telco, whichever else he betted on. So his ability to, forecast the next bull market is uncanny. It's just, I've seen him in the 89 bull market. I've seen him in the 2003 bull market. I've seen him in, so many other bull markets, or also when the market tops out. I found that to be an almost God-given ability.
Yes, indeed. In a small piece that I wrote for him, Ramesh, on Sunday, where I have taken the liberty of citing an anecdote from you as well. But in the same piece, I also wrote about how back in 2016 or 17, he was able to predict a tsunami of local flows, which will kind of overpower global flows. He was probably amongst the first ones to foresee it so many years before.
Like so many things else, Neeraj, you're absolutely right. He would tell me for many times, and particularly I tend to be somewhat more pessimistic to counterbalance his optimism about life, markets, whatever, that he would tell me, Ramesh, this kind of money that can come from domestic retail will dwarf what's coming for foreign investment. And I think events proved him right. The foreigners sold 30 billion, 40 billion, I'm not sure what the number is exactly, over the last couple of years. And here we're back at 60,000. So because of domestic flows. So he clearly, believed that the Indian public would get into markets. And when they came in, as you said, a tsunami of money would follow. And a dependence on FIs for feeling good in the morning would diminish. And he clearly, there's no doubt about that, he was a pioneer at that.
Yeah. Ramesh, two things. First, I want to stand on the back of the anecdote that you had given to me in that event, wherein the conversation around Rakesh Jhunjhunwala largely stays around the guts that he had for the common mere mortals, so to say, the guts that he had, how much he was able to back his bets. But when I was talking to you about his investment in Titan and how, whatever would have happened, you had mentioned to me, which not too many people knew, that he had taken the first investment, yes, but then he followed it up subsequently year after year with more doses. And you mentioned that requires skill to be able to see a continuous growth. So quite often, Ramesh, did you think that his ability or his guts or his ability to take larger bets dwarfed the kind of skill that accompanied that facet?
See, it's a very nuanced question, and I'm glad you asked me that, Neeraj. A lot of people, including me at first, because he would make decisions what seemed like spur on the moment. I bought this, I didn't buy this, and you would see it's too casual what he's doing, and he's just pushing his luck. What I didn't realize at that time, that there's an enormous amount of reading and research that has already gone in prior to making the decision. He would then laugh and say, I am the kind of investors that invest first, investigates later. But that was slightly misleading because he had already done a lot of investigation, thinking about businesses, companies, leaders, management before that. So I remember about Titan in particular, he told me that that was, of course, the best investment and maybe one third of his portfolio even today. He said that during the dog days of the 2003 bear market, a broker called him and said that if you want to buy Titan, I can offer you 10 lakh shares at 50 rupees and 20 lakh shares at 35 rupees and 40 lakh shares maybe at 33 rupees, So they were so desperate to sell. And he kind of felt, okay, I can't lose too much money. And he bought it. And then after that, he investigated by meeting the management and meeting the company and buying at a higher and higher rate. I think the understanding from his investment style is not reckless speculation, as sometimes he's been publicly accused of, but his understanding of risk and reward. He knew at a 300 crore market cap, the risk in Titan was very little. It's not going to go down. It is a Tata company at the end of the day. His latest example, to give you another example of when he started Akasa Airline, a lot of people, crack the joke that how do billionaires become millionaires? They start in airline. And, he kind of understood all of that. But he said, I'm taking a bet that I can handle. His portfolio allowed him to take the bet. So he cauterized that investment. I don't think he was liable for anything more than what he invested in that investment. And he said, if I lose it, fine. But what if I'm right? And what if this blue carrier market takes off in India? It'll be a huge opportunity. And I have one of the best management teams working for me in the business. And he also understood that the way you finance an airline had changed. It wasn't that you buy physical assets like planes, but you actually finance them through a leaseback scheme. So the capital outlay in an airline industry had changed dramatically. And he realized that over time you get better airports, off feeder airports, lower cost airlines would probably find a great niche in India. So I think he was very calculative of risk and reward. And I think people didn't understand that. They thought he was just being a bravado or taking exceptional risk. But he wasn't. He was not what you call all or nothing kind of guy. He always thought it through and said, what can I lose? Potentially, what can I make? He was not afraid of losses, but the losses were always measured.
Okay, that's powerful. And thanks for sharing that. Ramesh, great investors learn from each other materially. May I ask you, to your mind, what is that one thing that you think that he imbibed from the best practices that you exhibited in your investing, and vice versa? What is the one thing that you took from him over the years of your friendship when it came to investing?
Great question, Neeraj. Great question. He always used to tell me, and publicly, in fact, he would tell people that what I've learned from Ramesh is how to read. Because what I would do early in the years when we were together, I used to read a lot. I had a wide variety of reading sources. And whatever I liked, whatever I felt particular insight, I would send him those articles. And he said he'd always look forward to receiving my mails so that he could read whatever was current in the world markets or whatever. So he always, enjoyed the reading. In the 2003 bull run, he had also made a huge bet on public sector stocks like Bharat Electronics, Bharat Earth Movers, which I kind of influenced his thinking at that time in the 2003 bull market. And he would always publicly acknowledge that. So that was extremely gracious of him to acknowledge another man's idea. What have I learned from him? First, how to dream. But I think the biggest lacuna that, Neeraj, here's the thing. The market has gone from 500 to 60,000. So there have been enough opportunities for everyone. Everyone we know has had their own 50 baggers, 100 baggers, so it's not that the only 100 baggers were Titan, Lupin, and Crystal. You also had McDowell, you had HDFC Bank, you had Nestle, you had Maruti, you had so many stocks, Dr. Reddy's, that Asian Paints that have done well. So all of us found our own stocks. A common misconception is that all the part of his family or his friends group bought the same stocks. There is nothing is further from the truth. We all found our own way to heaven. We all found our own stocks out there. But what distinguished him is the amount he's willing to bet. The trick of successful investors is the bet size they make. So while I might be happy buying 1 lakh shares of a particular company or, 2 lakh share company, he used to think in 5%, 10%, 15% chunks of the outstanding float of the company. And that was the ability that propelled him to, genius levels. It's not that we didn't have 100 baggers in a portfolio, but while we took the mud and fashioned it into bowls, he took the mud and fashioned it into a jar. So, that was the distinguisher. His ability to take that bet once he was convinced was truly extraordinary.
Mhm. And Ramesh, you wish in some fashion, I mean, you told me the things that you learned from him and he's learned from you. Are some qualities difficult to take in? Because I mean, one is the ability to be able to read which he imbibed from you, or in your case, the things that you mentioned. But risk taking is probably a fairly innate feeling as opposed to something that you can just absorb from somebody. Is that the right way to look at it?
You're absolutely right. I mean, he learned because he's such a good learner. He learned from not only me, but many other people, how to behave out there. And I think part of it is cultural. I think I am a product of middle class background, and I've always valued money. Not that he didn't, he valued money, but he always had that spirit and the confidence that he'd make it back if he lost it. And I was trying to be an incrementalist out there. So I think it's a product of my background. I don't think, I try very hard to make bigger bets now, but still I'm a shadow of what I should be able to do. And I wish I'd learned that lesson from him. I would be, it's here's the thing, is that we all done well in the markets. All of us who came, the extraordinary group of Indian investors assembled between 85 and 90 in India, who saw the progress that India is going to make. R.K. Damani, Nimesh Shah, Durgesh Shah, Kamal Kabra. There's so many of these investors who bloodied themselves in 85, 90 and had one, we're bullish in India and we buy companies. And they all bought different businesses. What made Rakesh rise to the top of that group is because he could make huge outsized bets. He was not afraid. He would always tell me, Ramesh, I'm Dalal Street Road Sharp. He would say it with pride on his sleeve. So he didn't really care. While all of us, mattered more. Uh, I think if you're going to win a gold medal or if you're going to win an Oscar, it takes a huge commitment and a huge 24/7 outlook. And he did give that to the market.
You bet. Ramesh, last two or three questions. We've taken some time of yours, but last two or three questions, some personal, some public. One, the other thing that stood out for me as a journalist, Ramesh, over the last 15, 17, 18 years, first when I used to listen to him and then eventually when I interviewed him as well, is that the conversations from his end moved from trying to talk about specific bets to talking about India as a large bet. The last few conversations invariably move towards what this country will do, and then within that, how everybody else could do. Somehow, he kind of uh, started talking not just as an investor, but also as somebody who read through the tea leaves of what a country could do in the world, so to say.
You're so right. I think it's very perceptive, Neeraj. I mean, I can tell you a conversation that I had with him in the hospital when he was in hospital. And he's plugged into various machines, uh, really struggling with the pain that he had at that time. And he would tell me, Ramesh, in a matter of poignancy, he would tell me, I don't know whether I live to see this, but I see amazing things happening to India. People won't believe the India 25 years from now. And it's so uncanny that in the Independence Day speech, the Prime Minister talked about India becoming a developing country in 25 years. And he's been breathing and living that. And even in the last months of his life, when he was better, but not as bad as he was, what happened to him, he used to have almost stars in his eyes when he would talk about the future of our country. So, a great salute to him, no question about that.
Yeah, most certainly. Ramesh, last two or three questions. One thing that stood out for me from all the tweets that I saw from people who were, I suppose, were close to him and knew him in some fashion, again, people in the market, was that every single tweet spoke, aside of other things, about what a large-hearted man he was and how he was not willing to shy away from helping. Somebody's worked with him for 8 years in Rare, also wrote a piece for us and spoke about how much personally he was helped by Rakesh Bhaiya. In some sense, that large-heartedness of his doesn't come out in interviews, obviously, but it was a big virtue of what Rakesh Jhunjhunwala was.
Absolutely. I mean, as the old Hindi film goes, yaron ka yaar, doston ka dost. He was those kind. He loved to drink, loved to eat, loved to share a story, loved to socialize. He would keep telling me, Ramesh, the biggest regret of my life is that the BSc, which had a ring, no longer has a ring. because I would enjoy meeting everyone out there. And he would be always found on the last street at that time, eating pan, trading, uh, doing private trades, or visiting a broker's office. I think when the electronic happened, while it greatly improved the efficiency and quality of our markets, it detracted from his personal life because he loved meeting and sourcing people. But I'll tell you this interesting anecdote, Neeraj, which, when I came from America and a Wall Street background, and there used to be a saying in Wall Street that if you want a friend, get a dog. Because it's a dog eat dog world in Wall Street. Nobody helps each other out. You're on your own. And here I met this extraordinary group of gentlemen. And Rakesh was a prime example. His portfolio was in his sleeve. Anyone who met him and asked him respectfully, it could be my office dealer, it could be me, or it could be, the best investor. He would be happy to say what he was buying, or what he was going to buy, or what he liked. I mean, he didn't try and hide that information. I think he must have come on television and told to buy Titan 10 times. I've been with him to CCI Club, and women who knew of his reputation came and asked him, "Sir, what would you recommend to buy?" And I hear him tell them that buy Escorts or whatever the current stock that he liked at that time. So the ability to help and influence people, one, you do it at a personal level, but one, you do it at a professional level. They say, if you want to listen to me, this is what I'm buying. As simple as that. No ifs, buts, no deklo up. He wore it on his sleeve. So extraordinary talent that is.
Yeah. Ramesh, last question, really, so to say. There is a big role in a person's growing up, if you will, or staying through the course of arguably a volatile life that family and friends play. Now, I'm asking you out of the blue. I do not know how much you can talk about this, but if you can share some stuff about what role did family play for him in his life, both as an investor and otherwise, what role did friends like you and some of the others that you mentioned played in kind of making him the person that he was. It'll be lovely. If you cannot talk about it, completely understand.
No, I'll tell you in summation, clearly the family was very important to him, and he was blessed with children a bit late in his life. I think by the time, our children are growing up, he became a father for the first time. Our heart goes out, of course, to his absolutely wonderful wife, Rekha, and his three children. I think his daughter is maybe around 18, and the boys are, in fact, younger out there. And like any father, he doted on his children. My only thing, Neeraj, and just so that we get a complete picture of the man, rather than just a heliography, is that just like a person in the Olympic sports or Oscar winner, he was fixated on his professional life. He once told me that, Ramesh, since I became aware of things, I had only one desire in life: to earn money, to earn money, to earn money. And I think market gives you exactly what you want. And he wanted to be the king of the hill. And he became king of the hill. There's no question about that. He just lost, some time that he could have spent. I mean, I have grandchildren, as you know, and I know how much I enjoy that. But that enjoyment may come at a price of professional success. For him, it was the other way around. He was so focused on that I felt that he neglected his health at times. And but if there was a party, he was always the king of the party, the life of the party. The video circulating of him having a great time. So and this is the life you want to lead. And if you'll allow me to speak on his friend's behalf, Neeraj, I have a small poem that I read after his death to contemplate what he meant to all of us. So with your permission, I'll share those 4 lines with you. So that will be quite a good ending for you.
Please.
The poem goes, it's by Ellen Brenneman. It says, think of him as living in the hearts of those he touched. For nothing loved is ever lost, and he was loved so much. R.I.P. my friend Rakesh. You really influenced us all, and we love you all.
Ramesh, no more words. Just thank you so much. I know this would have been difficult for you, but thank you so much for talking about such personal facets. And I wish you the strength to be able to bear this loss.
Thank you, Neeraj, and R.I.P. Rakesh.
Yeah, much appreciate. Thank you so much for talking to us today.